Gavan, welcome, brave souls. I am your GM in the Great Barrier, broadcasting from the center of your entertainment galaxy. We are back tonight with Star Trek Adventures Broken Sword. Very specifically, we're back with the cast and crew of the Broken Sword. As we are at our mid-season point, we just passed that with last week's conclusion to, or well, rather the previous week's conclusion to episode 6. So we are doing our usual tradition of the mid-season Q&A stream. So we're happy to have you here tonight. For those of you that didn't submit questions beforehand, you can do so in the chat. If for whatever reason you're watching on Twitch and but not able to use the chat conveniently, you are not without options. We can, of course, oblige you with our... we have the Discord, which you are welcome to join. Traverse through the barrier and welcome into our little community. We've got an express Q&A chat. I may still pop in here and there to the other social media, but obviously my attention is on the others. I think I've gotten all the questions along at this point. Yeah, we'll go ahead and get things started here in just a moment. The only things I have to do would be to acknowledge our other friendly streaming channels here, in particular that of our own Calico, who streams over at, let's see, that would be Zyla OXO. I'll shout that out in the Twitch chat, and for those in the YouTube archive, you'll of course, as always, see it there. Besides being abused by your players and chat's redeems, how's everything going on the channel there, Caligo?
Going pretty good. I've been playing a lot of the RoboCop video game recently.
It's an interesting experience.
It's fun.
Yes. That's some D&D, and you know, I'm sure.
Dead or alive, you're coming with me.
Oh, nice. I'll definitely check that out. Also here, be sure to check out our own Overland gamer, who that is our own Mr. Azek Korg, Joe, who you were playing. I remember this charming little game called Galaxy of Pen and Paper just the other day, I think.
Yep, it's kind of a sequel to Knights of Pen and Paper, kind of a take on tabletop RPG and going around the galaxy. Lots of Firefly references and all kinds of sci-fi references. It's pretty fun. Very grindy. So if you like games where you have to repeat the basics, attacks, and fights to level up, then it's definitely a fun game. But it was exciting.
Yeah. Well, I would definitely encourage everyone to check both of them out, give them follows. If you're new here, give us a follow too. It'll help you keep up to date with everything we do here. But all that said, I am going to dip back from running things here and hand it over to our own capable Joe, the Overland Gamer, who will be running tonight's Q&A stream. So take it away, Joe.
Thank you, GM and the Great Barrier, for hosting this wonderful stream tonight. And thank you to our players for showing up on time. Well, most of us. I kid. They always show up when they most mean to, which means I think they're wizards. And thank you to the listeners who support all the fun stuff that can be found on this Twitch channel and in the TubeView archives. Tonight, we're going to have an open Q&A for our players. If you have any questions, please throw them into our chat, our stream chat, for those listening in the archives. Why weren't you listening live? Come on now. This is kind of a little get-to-know-you session for the players, for the GM, and where we we get to see where we've come and for the season, and we get to see where we are going. It's definitely been a long road, and we're finally getting from there to here.
This isn't the Aegis game.
Let's kick off with a little trivia. Thanks to Trek fans, NASA named a space shuttle Enterprise. What was it going to be called before?
damn, I haven't a clue.
That's a good one, because I don't know that.
The Constitution.
Ha! Brilliant.
Before we started out, I sent out some little cards for our live studio audience members to write down their questions on. Our first question comes from the audience. It says, "Why was Star Trek so successful? Because it had good genes." While we escort that person, while we escort that person to the nearest airlock, let's greet our guests. Thank you all for being here. Let's go through introducing our players and their respective characters, starting with our illustrious captain, or should I say, admiral.
No,
Taba.
not an admiral. Not an admiral. But hi. Did you hear that?
Yeah. What?
There we go.
Who is your character? Kind of describe a little bit for listeners who may not know what we are or who you are.
All right. My main character in this is Captain Tabak, scion of the House of Cord. A house that's a little bit that's run down a bit because of the and it's a merchant house, not a warrior house, and it's was on its last legs for a long time because his sire and grandsire were idiots who squandered the fortune. And he and the previous captain of the Yan combined their efforts to buy a crappy ship, the Yan, and Tabak, being an engineer by nature, made sure the dang thing could fly. Then had a horrible fight with the previous captain because the previous captain was doing dishonorable stuff. Because Tabak doesn't fight really well. He knows how to make a ship, doesn't know how to stick a sword into somebody else. But he managed it, and with the crew faithfully behind him, managed to make a bit of a name for himself, and he is currently back on his home world of Mektor, because the Yan went off to go do something else, which introduced my side character of Hemak, who knows how to fight, and knows how to stick hard metal things into soft, squishy things that scream and bleed. And but he has about the IQ of a sponge. So it's an interesting change between the two of them. But yeah, that's who I'm playing.
All right. Raldar, you're up next.
Hi, I'm Caldo. I'm playing Raldar, the ship's official main engineer, because the captain couldn't handle both titles.
Too many hats.
Too many hats. My character is the adopted son of the House of Kalorn, and the only one competent. I serve.
And of course, we never knew about this till this last adventure.
Yeah, you never told. No one asked. He didn't tell. He didn't care to. He didn't spend much time at home. Now, he is the ship's head engineer doing his gosh darn job to continue to piss off Kresic by being better. But he can't defend himself now. But yeah, that's pretty much who I'm playing.
Okay. Up next would be Whoa.
Hi, I'm Israel. I play the character Woe, and she's been missing for like 17 episodes, so I'm impressed if anyone remembers her. Also, R.I.P. Crooker. Love that boy. I'm so stupid for killing him. Anyways,
I remember Woe, and I miss Woe. I miss Woe a lot. Woe was my first hire on the ship. I miss Woe.
Aw, she'll come back.
That is a factual fucking lie, but alright.
Now listen, She was the first one he handpicked. Okay, you guys were just there. But she is a very, very large Zinti warrior. She's a little bit of a goofball, and I really don't feel like going into more than that. But yeah, I love her. I hope she comes back soon.
She got catnapped.
She did get catnapped. That is true. Pretty sure by my husband.
I made it. I'm alive.
Yay!
Yay.
Perfect timing. You can go next.
Wait. Well, could you say that again? You got kidnapped, and you're pretty sure by whom?
Oh, my husband. He was playing keg.
Oh, okay.
Kresic, welcome in. We are introducing ourselves and our characters.
Hi, I'm Kresik. I like clean water.
Yes, you
And he
do.
cannot lie.
Oh no. Anyways, no, you can call me Rev. I play the ship's doctor and resident grumpy old man. The Gorn named Kresik. I also play in my spare time the Riemann quartermaster / ex-assassin Zynal.
And last but not least, Cheesy.
Hi there, I play Traven. He is a chefy boy. He does all the cooking and gives the captain aneurysms on his spare time.
And the wonderful creator of Gawk Pockets, the sponsor of today's show. Can't forget Gawk Pockets.
Grr.
So this season we saw a lot of character development with our backstories. I felt like we had several episodes where it really delved deep into some of the underlying issues that our characters had. How have you been enjoying this season of Broken Sword, and what do you think has been some of your most memorable moments of this season? Kind of an open-ended question, so anybody can answer.
I'm sorry, you dropped out. Could you repeat the question?
This season we've had some memorable moments. What have been some of your favorites?
Tabak going home. And finally getting back with his family, at least for a little while. And the shock on Kresik's face when Kresik saw that Tabak's daughter has a waffle head instead of a flat head.
The math's not mathing, Captain. The math isn't mathing.
Let's see. I'd put my favorite to, well, frankly, any of the clippable moments I've pulled this season, including our one topical joke. But also just the sheer horror that all of you underwent in the shopping episode.
Shopping. Right. That was a massacre.
All right, we lost a crew member. We got a crew member. People died. It is what it is.
The captain got kidnapped for a while.
Put us in a hellish situation because of that.
My favorite part was Zynal. Just Zynal in his entirety.
So, since starting the campaign, what were your characters' goals and motivations, and how have they changed through the course of season 2? We'll start with Tabak on this one.
Goals and motivations? Make money for his house. No longer be destitute. His house has survived the past couple of years simply by breeding and selling Norwegian forest cats from Earth. In case anybody had missed that part. His entire goal has always been the betterment of his house. And he actually likes the crew. I mean, even if they're not all Klingons, some of them have some very Klingon spirit. A lot of them are very useful. He freed Vopri. Vopri was a slave. He gave Vopri his freedom. Because, Tabak knows it's better to have free people than slaves, because the free people actually give a crap. The slaves just want to get away. And he likes Vopri.
I think everybody likes Vopri.
Vopri is the heart and soul of that ship. When everybody else is dead, it'll be Vopri at the helm, flying away to do whatever it is Vopri is going to go do.
So here's my plan to put Vopri in a Dutch oven.
How dare you?
I don't think that's going to happen, Chief.
I'm a very hungry boy in the target hold.
Hemok, who just came on board the ship, literally, because he was loading stuff up for their recent, cross-empire trip, and fell asleep in the cargo hold. He has no goals. He is a block of wood. He likes to shoot things and blow things up, and he doesn't really have much ambition more than that. And he has zero filter between his brain and his mouth. Anything he thinks comes just pouring out like an avalanche of treacle. Just right out it comes.
Avalanche of Treacle sounds like an indie rock band name. I just hope you know this.
It very well might be. I was going to use another thing to be an avalanche of, but I'm trying to keep it clean. For once.
Raldar, how about you? What motivations did your character start with, and how are they changed in season 2?
Well, starting out was, maintaining an independent living. It has very much changed from that to fatherhood with the giant boy. And also dealing with the bounty on his head. Begrudgingly. But, he is making it slowly along. Keeping the captain ship working until, it just doesn't.
Kresik, what about you?
So, I mean, hey, at the beginning of the series, Kresik was just wanting to hide away and live out a life unnoticed and away from things. But just as things have gone on, and he's potentially found a way to, at least in his eyes, redeem his career. I wouldn't say he's becoming a different character, but as those ideas and desire to make something of himself are continuing to come up and have a chance to be realized, definitely some of the older, darker, and by older I mean older in the past, darker side of his medical acumen is slowly coming to the fore, to the point where it is beginning to become a bit of an obsession to get everything done perfectly himself, regardless of the cost. So the beginnings of the slow spiral, potentially back into mad scientist. We'll see. We'll see how the rest of the series goes.
That's exciting. Whoa, how about you?
Her original ambitions and goals and motivations were to build a new family, and now it is to get away from old family, and just right now it's just survival, y'all. It's just getting through the day.
She prefers the found family to the family that found her.
Exactly.
And Traven, final question to you.
Well, his main goal at the start was to, survive, and I don't think that's changed at all. But his new goals are just to be more useful to the crew. Like he loves being the cook. He just wants to do more.
With more experience with the system, GMing style, and live streaming, has your approach to how you role play your character or role playing in general outside of this game changed in any way, any notable way?
You just opening that one up to the floor, or were you asking
Yep.
anybody in particular?
Open-ended.
My role playing has zero to do with the system I'm playing in. Role play is role play. The rules in which you roll, in which the simulation runs, to me are totally separate things.
Oh, it's still worth thinking, like pondering how you guys have progressed with the system since, like, allow. Let me put it this way. Yes, better understanding the system has kind of let you guys flourish more. Some of that being the narrative moments and beats that get delivered, but part of it is feeling like you have more agency to do things, or like knowing how to make the mechanics work in such a way that you get things done. In that sense, it's the two kind of intermesh, I think.
Yeah, I would say for me, it hasn't affected my role playing style in terms of how I play characters, or the like, but it definitely impacts how you role play and the smoothness with which you role play with the GM. So, for example, season one, it was a lot of, hey, I want to do this. How do I do this? And then we would pause, we would talk about how that would be done with the system. And it led to a slower process and people's trains of thought getting lost more. And as we've all gotten better and more fluid with the system, I think it's become a lot more fluid in the role play where it's just like, I want this to happen and I know how to make that happen.
Going back and listening to the archives on YouTube, I have noticed that we as a whole are getting more familiar and more comfortable using our talents and some of the values and stuff like that in our character, which was considerably noticeable since season one. So that was something that I definitely noticed. Anyone else have a thought on how they've changed role playing wise since starting the adventure or season two?
I've gotten slightly better with practice.
Yeah.
You don't have to lie.
I've gotten
Right.
worse with practice. I'm sorry.
Yeah. I did very much like some of Croker's moments earlier in the season, like the immediate the after the dinner on Mektor, Tabak and Croker's little heart to heart was a really good scene.
Yeah, I like giving him a little more depth than the luscious locks and beautiful eyes.
Uh,
He's got a heart too, or
Croker's
he
more
has
than
a
just a
heart.
pretty face.
Exactly.
It was a really good
Was
scene.
being
It
the
was a,
operative
He
word.
was also a great set of
oh,
legs.
it was a very good scene. Let's not make it sound bad. It was a really good scene. Woe did a really good job playing that part out, and it was really well done. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Has your character faced any particular challenging situations this season? And do you think, looking back on those, do you think you handled it the best you could, or do you think how would you have you changed it uh, slightly or for the better? We'll start with Traven.
Say that full sentence one more time. I think I read that wrong in my head.
Has your character faced a particularly challenging situation in the game this season, and how did they handle it? And would you handle it differently, or would you keep going the same way it was handled?
Uh, I feel like I could have prevented the broker incident. I'm having problems speaking up and knowing when to put myself into a conversation, and I'm trying to work on it and change it. I'm really bad with social situations, and I don't know when I'm supposed to jump in without interrupting somebody. If that makes any sense.
Yeah, makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
Gaming
Understandable.
online and over stream definitely has those challenges along with it. Whoa, how about you?
Well, hello.
Or what?
Has your character faced any particular challenging situations in game this season, and how did you handle it, and how would you have changed it to make it different?
Oh, so many things I would change. Oh my god. First, I would like to be here more often, but exhaustion and work doesn't really allow that. But I think I would have liked the Croker incident, but also the Betty reaction. I did not give her the appropriate reaction that she should have had, and I do regret that. But all I can think to do is kind of let that come out slowly over the next few sessions.
Betty is literally processing the situation.
Well, Betty is literally processing, and that is what we are going to go with if anyone questions us.
Kresik, you're next.
Yeah. I think the biggest thing in his arc this half of the season was deciding what to do with the Nausicaan. Um, would I have done anything differently? Rolled lower in my attempt to subdue Traven, but I don't think that's not something that's on me. That's on the dice. I blame the dice for rolling that high. But no, did it suck for me to do? Yes. As a player, I can't say that I enjoyed putting Kresik through that. But following his logic, everything made sense.
the dice are not to be blamed for negative interactions to players. We still blame them, but
You're right. You know what? I should have blamed the GM for making me roll the dice. Thank you, Azek.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say another way that you could another way you could put it with everything that you went through. Well, with regard to Kressik's action on the Noskins, you've lied, you've covered up your own crimes or made them out to be committed by other men. You've been, you committed murder or pretended to be an accessory to murder, but the most damning thing of all is that you think you can live with it. And if you had to do it all over again, you would. I'm just going to edit this out. I'm erasing
No,
this
it was
entire
good.
stream.
It was good. It was good. I liked it.
that's going on.
Don't you dare! Don't you dare! You leave that in.
Oh, no, of course. I'm just
Raldar,
going for
what
the
about
full
you?
reference.
The only regret I have is not secretly growing a clone of the captain so he could never lock me out of the systems again.
Oh, that's a totally valid regret.
Sure, I like that thought.
You're not supposed to.
Oh, okay, good. All right, we're safe then.
Yeah.
Our resident Kazinti might actually enjoy having two captains to play with. Captain Tabak, what about you?
Twice the medals.
What has been my Tabak's biggest challenge?
Yeah.
His crew.
It's simply because you won't cuddle low. That's your whole problem.
Tabak is married. Okay.
And it's a regular platonic cuddle. Get
cuddle.
over yourself.
Klingons don't platonically cuddle.
Maybe it's time they started.
Just deep Michael Dorn voice, nursing a glass of prune juice. Klingons do not cuddle.
Klingons do not cuddle.
At least not outside the clubs.
Except outside of the the Klingon cuddle dungeons.
Maybe tactical snuggling for you.
Tactical snuggling. That's friggin' hilarious. Oh my god. No, honestly, the just trying to. The crew itself has just been. I mean, he spent most of the first season just trying to make the crew work. Thankfully, most of those problems work themselves out without his direct input, aside from occasionally yelling at people. But he's just way more worried about his family and his house than he has been about almost anything else. Now he's got other major concerns. The aligning with that guild whose name I suddenly can't remember.
The Shopmouth Guild.
Yeah, them. After getting multiple warnings, don't do it. He did it anyway. His ship's cook and their word I'm looking for. Indecipherable intentions towards his daughter. Because he doesn't want to have to kill the trail, because that would just be waste.
Maybe you can maim them.
I could, but the cook needs both hands and both legs.
Hey, there's one
Needs both
specific
legs.
area that would solve all your problems.
I couldn't do that. That would be worse than killing him.
I know somebody with a good prosthesis guy.
I don't think Tabak could have handled anything any different than he did, considering who and what he is. I mean, there's shit going down right now that I would love to be able to talk about that I just can't. So there's some foreshadowing for everybody. but Tapok, I think, tried to handle everything to the best of his ability. That's where I think I'll put that. I mean, and again, going back to Hammock, Hammock is just easy. Hammock is one of the easiest characters I've ever played because he has no ambitions and nothing to worry about, and is just there to be a meat shield and a beat stick. So, moving on.
We'll move to the GM. Being a game master for this motley crew, what are some particular challenging situations you've had running the game or playing the game if it's happened during Darkest Nebula?
Oh, well, the travails of a GM are never truly over. So, the big thing has, like for me, meta perspective is definitely keeping things efficient or trying to, you know, make sure that by one token that I am managing the scene, or I am truly managing the scenes, keeping everything effective, employing economy in those story beats, and like designing these sessions so that they are, uh, I should say rather, the overall adventures, so that it's easy enough to get through. Try to avoid more 6 or 7 part episodes, as I don't think anything's gone quite that long in this campaign here, but Aegis suffered that a little bit. Otherwise, it's just, trying to find those right narrative beats, map things out in such a way that that we cover some major beats, that we give everyone, like, some good standout moments throughout the seasons. I do feel it was if there were one thing I could change, though I go back and forth on that. The premiere episode, Bounties, aka the shopping episode gone terribly awry, does feel like it would have made a better season 1 finale, or if I just left that distinction. But that was partly, it was a result of a lot of different scheduling issues that it wound up being the more effective solution there. So there's that. In my brief little stint as a player, I had some challenges trying to work out effective clues, and try to be effective with Vopry in particular, in a time when he is a very small, very shy guy and doesn't want to put his neck out too much, because it doesn't make sense to push him out too far when he is he would just about consider himself more passive than anybody else on the crew. We officially hit the limit break with Action Vopry the other day.
You've definitely given us a lot of stories and a lot of great moments across season 2. We really appreciate it. If you enjoy Star Trek Adventures content, be sure to check out other awesome streamers. ELH has some great streams going. Q Times has several YouTube videos up. And of course, our GM in the Great Barrier does another live stream of Star Trek Adventures. Aegis is on Saturdays. Be sure to check out the schedule for that. Are there any other particular Star Trek streamers that you would like to shout out? I see Klingon Pop Warrior is online. We raid her quite a bit.
Oh no, but that's more just it makes the most sense going from this. She doesn't actually do Star Trek Adventures per se. That being said, I do have a few others that I could think to shout out here. The Author 13, he runs. He's run 2 campaigns I've been following. One ended, and the other came up on The other started fairly recently. They're on the, I think the Scavenger campaign is what it is. So that's nice. The most obvious of, sorry. The most obvious of shoutouts I could think to give would be to our friends over at the Architects of Fate, who they do a lot of tabletop in general, but most especially I greatly enjoy their Cookie Trek game. Basically, they run they put together a Star Trek Adventures campaign, or rather, a Star Trek episode in the course of an hour and a half using the engine, and they were basically doing the captain's logs before the captain's logs existed. And it was great fun. They even let me guest produce on that, which was a lot of fun. Can't sing their praises enough. They run a couple Star Trek games throughout the week. They're running one right now, as a matter of fact. We'll probably miss them, though, so I don't know.
Definitely some amazing people to check out. Modifius's main website has a community tab that you can find out more streamers direct from them too. So we definitely thank everybody who's streaming and helped to support this game. Jim Johnson, the project lead for Star Trek Adventures at Modifius, has done an absolutely fantastic job in bringing a team together that really punched this game forward and keeping the community alive. So we really appreciate everybody doing that. Star Trek trivia time. In what series did writer Larry Niven introduce cat-like alien race, the Kzinti,
The animated
into
series.
the Star Trek universe? Yep.
The animated series. He reskinned a story from his known space universe, and instead of it being a puppeteer and two humans, it was Spock in the role of the puppeteer and Uhura and Sulu in the role of the humans. That's pretty much the only change he made to the entire thing.
It's also why it's the only episode of the animated series worth watching.
I don't know. There were a couple of animated series that were pretty good. Some of them, most of them, are not the greatest. And
You're right. How could I forget the Inflatable Enterprise?
There are only a couple that I would consider canon of the animated series, and those were that's like the two-parter that was written by Ann Crispin, where Spock has to go back in time to save himself.
That one is good.
That one is one of the few that I actually would consider canon out of animated series.
But Sean, you're forgetting about like some of its finest moments. What about more troubles, more tribbles? Have you completely?
That one was silly. I did like that one. They dumped the tribbles into the Klingons' ship again.
You've completely ignored the infinite Vulcan.
Yes, I did. Giant 50-foot tall Spock trying to mind meld with an unconscious, tiny, normal-sized Spock. Yeah, that one was. Yeah.
I think I read a fan fiction like that.
Oh, hold on.
Dude. You said fanfic, not /fic, right?
I love you so much, man.
He's an absolute keeper.
Speaking of the Kzinti, our next question comes from our Reddit audience. The Speeching Bard asks, where is Woe? Our resident Kzinti has been lost for some time. This one kind of goes to both Woe and our GM, because you know that and what you would like to share without spoiling anything that may happen in the second half of the season.
How much are we willing to share, GM? I feel like we shared a little bit.
There you go. That's about enough.
We'll leave it at that.
Yep.
She's with her loving family.
Yes. Many a tender thought there. Well, stay tuned.
So, for those that weren't listening to episode 1, season 1, what exactly happened? We were in a firefight, and they kind of popped in, grabbed her, and popped out, didn't they?
Yeah. Well, it was first season 2, episode 1.
Season 2, yeah.
But yes, it was a confusing market encounter where Woe had an encounter with an old acquaintance, at the very least, a Kzinti by the name of Keg, and wanted very much to get away from that. Just at that same time, Raldar, I believe, was being followed by some Creel, the orange, like, lantern-jawed, like, big, muscly creatures on their, like, as far as their upper bodies, but spindly legs below. And they were basically pursuing him for the purposes of a bounty. And as a firefight broke out there, Keg took advantage of Woe's momentary distraction to fire up a disruptor, give her a horrible shock and beam her away. All dreadful.
Yeah, and apparently the bounty on Raldar is the captain's fault.
Yes, that's why if it isn't the consequences of your actions, come to find out.
Yeah.
Well, look, it was business. And if they're going to be upset with that, well, I can make more widowers.
Oh dear.
So we'll have to wait until the second half of season 2 to figure out the end of that story. From the live studio audience again, a Kzinti had captured a Medusan, but since Medusans are energy beings, they had trouble deciding how to eat him. The Kzinti captain had the last word. He said they should use lots of sugar because everyone knows a spoonful of sugar helps the Medusan go down.
Oh, judgment.
Oh, ho, ho, I love that one. Thank you.
Apparently, the airlock was malfunctioning. I think the Targ need feeding. Security, see to that person, please. Thank you.
Our security is missing.
Another question from
Release the
Reddit.
hound.
I'll steal your bones for that.
Release the hound.
Moopsie.
Ah!
Another question from a Reddit fan. This one's for all the players, or it's let's see. This one is for Cheesy. How do you think that Traven's experience with the Klingon afterlife has changed Traven?
Instead of being more of a fanboy, he's more culturally sensitive to it. He understands that him running into battle is not actually what a Klingon would do. Like running in wildly and blindly. He has a new respect and admiration for how Klingons do things and understands that their form of honor goes way deeper than just fighting in battle. It's something that they do every day and follows every single one of their actions, and he's trying to incorporate that into his own culture to try and be a better person, because it is a very admirable trait, and he wants to be like his fellow honorable Klingons.
He's not
Fine.
just a fanboy anymore.
I was gonna say he's finally
No.
moving past his weeaboo face.
Yes. No more cosplays for this guy.
Okay.
This season saw a lot of different plot twists, like a Trill being sent to the Klingon afterlife. We've had a couple other plot twists in the season. Is there anything particular in the plot twists that we've had that were super surprising, or were they, what stuck out to you as very interesting?
Angry
Open.
Vopri.
Open question.
Yeah, Vopri losing his shit. That was funny and startling all at the same time.
Definitely want to see more of that. That'd be awesome.
I ain't make no promises.
He got his one per season moment.
Yep.
he has to recharge.
Yep.
Now it's going to be like Morn. Everything that he does out of character is just going to be in the background, you know? Did you hear what Morn did? Yeah, he took off all his clothes, ran around the promenade naked, screaming, "We're all going to die."
One thing that one actual twist from my perspective as a GM, is obviously I do a fair bit of planning, and at times I do get to work things out with players to see if they're interested vaguely in some ideas for moments. So a good bit of it obviously comes from them. I have little moments where I can help foster things a little bit, but there are still some times where there's genuine surprises. I had to say, I was not expecting Tabak and Krisick, for that matter, to hang back after that last episode, but it did make neat narrative sense in many ways.
Yeah, I mean, that was really the only reason I did it, because it made better sense.
Yeah.
For what the character was having to deal with at the moment.
I'm still mad at you for this. You took my heart and my old man. How dare you?
Are there any teases for plot twists coming up that you, Mr. GM, want to tease for us coming up in the second half?
Well, I definitely assure everyone interested, Woe will return. It's very much the plan. I also don't plan on. I should say, I'm going to give everybody reason enough to get off Mektor for a while and come back out into the depths of space.
There's a
Yeah, all I
planet eater.
keep hearing is the sound of the other shoe hitting the floor.
I'm picturing a planet eater is heading towards your place, but I just watched Babylon 5 where they had a planet killer. So
Yeah, the foot. Yeah, I don't want if a big round disc with 4 tentacles on the front of it comes flying out of a blue hole in outer space, we're all done. Okay. Yes, B5, another one of my favorites.
what other exciting things happened this season that really stuck out to you or your characters as far as memorable moments?
The our loss this last mission. Not, I mean, Croker just poof. That was stunning.
I mean, someone was stumped me for sure.
What was that?
You heard me.
No, I didn't. It broke up really badly. That's why I asked.
How dare you? Okay. And I said, well, someone was definitely stumped.
Yeah. It certainly wasn't him. He was disintegrated.
We have had a lot of attrition this season, starting as far back as the season finale, with 2 main characters at least temporarily taken out of commission, and then we have gone through a number of supporting characters lost as well. One in a war zone, although not the one I was expecting, and one just one lost in a street brawl. I suppose, speaking of surprises earlier, the sudden reveal that it was the Nausicaan all along, at least as far as the responsible party behind your selling information about you guys.
That was clever. That was very clever.
Yeah, I think that was a really big plot twist. Facilitated by our very own host for tonight, by the way, Azek.
Yes, quite the advantage.
Still my favorite die roll of the season 2 was that knee to the face.
Yeah.
Nausicaans aren't much of a threat to one-armed Klingon with a really powerful knee.
One armed. He has 2 arms. What are you talking about?
It's true.
There's
Well,
another twist that we all still have to digest.
Yeah, that and the walking, talking cat. Which again is
Well-
not the same as a Kazinti. Okay.
No, it's not.
He walks like a regular cat. He doesn't walk on his hind legs much, but yeah.
Yeah, he still does engineering and he talks and he's that big. That's just freaky.
I think the other big surprise was Traven selling us out to the Federation.
Don't you talk about my boy that way.
I'm just speaking the truth.
Yeah,
Are
Mr.
you?
G. I'm still not sure how that's working out. Mr. GM and I had a conversation about that the other night.
Or the
just-
idea that a conversation needs to be had because we didn't really have time to take care of it at the end of the adventure where it was most relevant, and then whatever Azek might have had planned, if there was anything more planned, Darkest Nebula happened, and
Tapioca.
yes. Speaking of clippable moments, the Klingon gods only know what was going to happen there, and they died. So
yeah, they don't know anything anymore.
so yeah, that's. I definitely say that there have been some interesting moments. I'd actually like to take a moment and say, in what I do not intend to come off across as a negative trait in the slightest. I think it was interesting this way, but I think we have to acknowledge this season has been weird.
Yeah,
A really weird flow compared particularly to the last one, because we had the first one seemed like it was going to start off easy, then really upped the intensity. The recovery episode, as it were, where the crew makes it back to the ship but finds it no longer works thanks to the security protocols, and the captain dealing with his bout of captivity. That's interesting things going on there. The fact that immediately after that we get comparative breather episodes, especially the very short one where Azek is actually elected first officer. That, again, speaking of interesting plot moments or twists to the season, that conversation was actually had, and that designated something more there. It made things very interesting. But yeah, it's been less of the constant pace of the same type of action adventures that we had in the first season. And I think it's a nice way to differentiate it so far.
yeah.
Exciting stuff. I really enjoyed that conversation with the team, or the crew, with Azek becoming captain. That was really cool.
I mean, normally on Klingon ships, the captain, picks the most well-versed, the best person to serve as the first officer. But the first officer, you hear, I work under the captain, but I serve the crew. They're like, if you look at the U.S. military, the sergeant is the one who runs the unit. The lieutenant is barely there at all. So the first officer is kind of like a sergeant. He's the one who takes care of the crew, makes sure the ship is running smooth, and makes sure the captain isn't being a moron. And we're not a traditional Klingon ship. We're not KDF. We're not even Imperial, which doesn't exist yet. We're not Imperial Navy. It's a commercial ship. But we seem to be getting in an awful lot of fights. So.
Trivia time.
Oh.
According to the results from the 2013 Star Trek convention, what was the 7th best Star Trek film ever?
Which? 7th best.
Yep.
Why would you do this?
I'm buzzing
Now
in.
remember, it was 2013.
I'm buzzing in on this one.
Go ahead.
It was Galaxy Quest.
Yes, it was.
Yeah, I was trying to. Yeah, and yeah, it was a Star Trek movie, sort of.
And
It was
it's still considered a more Star Trek movie than some of the newer stuff.
I loved when Patrick Stewart was talking about, he didn't want to go see it because he thought it was, making fun of them. And then Frakes was like, Patrick, you got to go see this movie. So we saw it like 3 times, and he's like, it's like it's like an homage to the fans. And it is.
I know we asked this on our first Q&A, but when we'll go through each player here on this one. When did you first encounter Star Trek? Starting with Captain. Actually, we'll start with the GM.
Oh, well, I have. I've grown up with the thing. It is. The Next Generation was on when I was. It was just on in the background when I was a small one, and it very much caught my attention. So I've had that persistent interest in Star Trek the whole time. No, I. Oh, jeez, I honestly don't know that I could answer it more concisely than that. It's been a time, especially as I've found tabletop as an outlet to work with it in a different way and bring other people into it. It's made it very exciting.
Captain Tavok.
I was born in 1971, 2 years after the original series went off the air and was already in syndication. And I was born a 3rd-generation Trekkie. I was doomed from conception.
Raldar.
I mostly grew up with like Star Wars, but I had always known about Star Trek. The first time I actually watched an episode of Star Trek was when I was in high school, and I went over to a buddy's house to play Dungeons and Dragons, and they had an episode of Voyager playing when we took a break to eat. And me and another guy just sort of sat there and watched it.
Perfection. Best way to be
Trying-
introduced. No
Trying
context.
to make me feel old. God.
Feel old. And then forced myself to watch, the first seasons of TNG.
Kresic.
Though I may play the old character, and though I may be old in many ways, I am not of the vaunted category of our captain.
I'm just going to hang up and go away.
So, my history with Star Trek. So I was 2nd-generation Star Trek fan. My parents, my uncles, they all watched it. My parents would put me and my brother to bed early on, I don't even remember what night it was anymore. And then they would do their date night and watch the episodes of Star Trek Voyager as they came out. So I remember sneaking out of the room very stealthily. I now realize I was not being stealthy at all. And watching Voyager as it aired the last couple seasons as like a 3 or 4-year-old. And then into Enterprise, which I started actually watching with my family. And then from there, went back to the beginning, back to the original series, and then TNG, and then Deep Space Nine, and then the animated series. I can safely say that I have consumed every piece of televised and filmed Star Trek media, even the ones that suck, in my opinion. Just my opinion. The ones that suck. Also a long-time player of Star Trek Online. I started in 2012, and have been playing it since
just
then.
a little bit after it went free to play.
Yep.
That was when I started on STL.
Yep. Used to play PvP with the other Klingons. It was a good time. Always a Klingon main from day one. And that's been me in Star Trek in general. I've always loved Klingon ships, Klingon culture, and all of that. So this was just a natural continuation of my...
But you're not even playing a Klingon.
Because don't talk about that. It will be interesting to note one of my character concepts that I gave to the GM was a Klingon. And between the two, the Gorn was the one that he felt was the better fit. So that's the one I went with.
Which Gorn came first, GM?
You did. Well done. I was the last addition to the crew.
Yep, I believe that tracks.
I don't even usually jump onto Reddit forums. I don't usually play RPG games with people that aren't in my friend group. But this just looked interesting. And I was like, hey, let's give it a shot. And now here we are. Now I'm stuck with y'all. For worse or even worse.
And we're so confused.
It gets worse.
Oh, I know.
Whoa, how about you? When did you first encounter Star Trek?
I first encountered it probably, I guess probably like one of those early childhood memories. My mom's best friend often dressed as Star Trek characters for Halloween, and my mom did too. She was a I have pictures of them with me dressed as a Firewalk character, as you do. But my earliest memory is we weren't allowed to touch the action figures. They were everywhere, and we weren't allowed to touch them, and we touched them so much. They were so touched by the time I got through there. Just utterly sampled. So, that said, it was never something that really interested me. I was also of the Star Wars folk until one morning I came out and my mom was watching a video called Data Card by Pogo. And that was probably 7 or 8 years ago. And it was just so catchy and fun. And I was like, who's the hot guy with the gold eyes? And it turned out to be Data, and I've had a crush on Data ever since. So here we are.
I've seen that video listed around, and I have just continued to refuse to watch it.
Well, you're wrong for not watching it. It's great.
Entirely possible, yet here I am.
How dare you?
Group
GM,
watch party.
I will join you. I will join you in not watching it.
I'm not fun.
What are we not watching?
I'm not sure, but you can join in with it.
Okay.
It's the hip thing to do.
Yeah.
Draven, what about you?
I got into Star Trek it was a big me thing. My family's always been into Star Wars and Lord of the Rings. I'm actually the first person in my family to get into Star Trek. I was working at a gas station, I think 5, 6 years ago, and one of my friends, his name was Richard, he was like, hey, have you ever seen Star Trek before? And I was like, no, not really. I wanted to try it. He goes, you should try Voyager. I think you'd like Voyager. And then I watched it, and then Janeway became my favorite captain, and then I watched DS9, then Cisco became my favorite captain, and then I watched Enterprise, and Cisco was still my favorite captain. That's just kind of how it went.
My dad introduced me to Star Trek Next Generation shortly after introducing me to Doctor Who. and I was hooked. I thought it was really cool growing up. One of the big moments that I remember from the show was this was when I had graduated, had gone off to college, and I was back in Gothenburg. And growing up in a small town, especially small ag town in Nebraska, you're considered kind of a geek if you're into anything that's not like normal, right? Nor quote unquote normal. So me being into Doctor Who, Star Trek, stuff like that, gaming, I was very out of the norm. But I found a group of friends that I could hang out with and spend time with that were of the same mindset. So flash forward to college, me and a buddy of mine were down in his basement watching episodes of Next Gen that were online. One of the high school girls that uh, was dating my friend's brother came downstairs and she saw Star Trek on the TV and said, "Oh, that's awesome! It's Star Trek." And that was at the moment that I realized that Star Trek had finally hit mainstream where, hey, Star Trek is cool. I had, that aha moment of Star Trek is cool. And it's just been a roller coaster ride. Kind of sounds like this kind of goes to everybody. When did you have that like Star Trek is really cool moment? Was it right from the get go, or was there another moment where you kind of hit that this is really awesome moment?
It's been the whole time for me.
Yeah, like I said, I grew up with it. There was never a time it wasn't on or around. When I was about 5, I think, my dad took me to the very first Star Trek convention in New York. They anticipated 1,500 people and 8,000 showed up. I don't remember a damn thing except I walked out of there with a tribble in my hand. Um, a real one, like one of the ones that bounced off of Shatner's head. Uh, and then Star Wars came out, and I think I saw that in the theaters 6 times. Episode 4, and then Star Trek: The Motion Picture. I've always been weird and a geek, and I mean I was in high school marching band. I mean, I've been playing D&D since I was 11. Uh, it's very hard for me to call anything weird or whatever if it's always been a part of my life. It's just I. Other people can call it weird. Other people can say it's I mean, I'm happy that so many people enjoy Star Trek now. Granted, you still got the problem with toxic fandom. I mean, between Star Wars and Star Trek, I mean, half the fans hate everything half the fans hate half of what's come out, and I'm just sitting here going, "Ooh, more Trek," or "Ooh, more Star Wars." I don't give a damn. I'm just happy that it's still running, and you know, I I don't know when it became normal. I could say when D&D became normal, and that was about 10, 15 years ago. D&D basically seemed to have broken into the mainstream, and all of a sudden it was everywhere, and everybody was playing, and I'm watching all of these newbies play now who are where I was 30 years ago, and it's really annoying. Um, but I don't know. It's always been. We are all Kosh. All right, so moving on.
Is that pretty much the same for the rest of you?
I'm gonna say it was DS9. Look, when I was watching Trek, I found TNG enjoyable, found it all right, but I honestly was getting really fucking tired of it by the end. I was skipping episodes.
And in some ways, you can tell that they were too. I think that there's that one episode in the 7th season, Masks, that I, for one thing, did not like. I watched once when I was like really young, and then I don't think I found it again until my significant other was doing a watch through on Netflix, and I watched. It's like, man, the characters are just like calling every trope here. They're just going with the flow much more than usual. In the past, they'd play it for but what is this strange thing going on? It's like, I think that the ship's being turned into some kind of temple. I'd better play along as like this rival god figure. Like it felt like.
Oh yeah, that's the one where
remember that.
Data gets possessed by the mask.
Yes,
Yeah, I
yes.
remember that one.
Yeah, Brent Spiner might have been the one
Right.
person that was having a fun time on that episode because it was more for him to do than, or was breaking out from the usual Data stuff. It was channeling his good old Night Court stuff. In some ways.
Oh, okay. Speaking of Night Court and Brent Spiner, you do know that with the Night Court revival, he and that actress who played they were on it again, playing the same characters.
I was aware.
Okay.
I heard something about it. I haven't watched the Night Court revival.
Neither have I.
I'm not a big Night Court head, I will admit. But yeah, no, that's yeah, that just seconded there, like near the end. It definitely shows signs of, yeah.
Star Trek, especially the early eras, focused a lot on the Federation side of things. I think most of the series kind of do. You have episodes that splatter in the cultures of other primary races. Some of my favorites, Deep Space Nine episodes, were the Klingon focused ones.
Oh yeah.
In Broken Sword, we are a fairly Klingon focused game. How has your Star Trek experience affected your gameplay, or has it, as far as kind of getting off the mindset of like we don't have to worry about the Prime Directive as much being Klingons versus if we were playing a Federation game? Start with Traven.
Say that one more time. My signal cut you out a little bit.
How has Star Trek affected your role play of your characters, if any, especially because the early eras focused a lot on the Federation side of things?
Well, I will definitely say that DS9 has fully helped me be able to actually play a Trill and understand the Trill history. That's the reason why I picked Trill. Trill is my favorite Star Trek race. They're just really cool, and they remind me of the Stargate.
Gold.
What's Goa'uld? Yeah, just like a really chill version of the Goa'uld. And I really like them. And with being able to watch DS9, I can role play it correctly and be able to understand how they talk while having all of these personalities inside them. I will say it's one thing they didn't teach me was that in the early days of Trill, everything was way more secretive than it is in DS9 era. So I had to look that up just a tad bit. I wish they would go into the early races and how their history is, because there's not a lot of history for like Trill, Sulabons. What's the race that Xynol is again?
Raymond.
Remans. There's just not a lot of like big history. Like I want to know how they were when they were first created, how their culture started out before the Romulans got involved, and stuff like that.
The only data we have on Raymond's is from Star Trek Nemesis. That was the first time we even heard of them. When they first showed up, we never heard of them before that.
They need to have like a Steve Irwin type show where it's just Picard, but he's going to every single culture and just like, these are the lovely people of this planet. This is their history.
I think that
God,
you'd
that
be
would take forever to do. There's so many new species anymore.
feel like you'd be looking more for like more in the vein of travel show than Steve Irwin. That you risk the alternative would be to risk condescending to them. Although I do love the idea of Patrick Stewart in like that beige outfit when he visited the Romulans during the first season of Picard, just wandering around in like that ridiculous hat and or, no, it's more like a tan suit, but it's khaki color. That's what it was. The freaking khaki colored ensemble that he was going around in. And
he was trying so desperately not to look like he was in Starfleet.
Yeah,
My name is Jean-Luc Picard, and I'm going to wrestle this Gorn.
no, just just describing a people to like a camera or hollow recording, and like just somebody staring like a hole right through him, like, dude, we're right here.
Well, how has Star Trek affected your role play of your characters?
Well, obviously, we're playing Klingons. It informs us as to how our characters would think and act.
Hold on, just a moment. I need to change a nickname here. Stand by.
Yeah, I know the nickname change is coming.
Uh-oh.
Yep, got him.
So I will say, Starfleet or not having to follow a prime directive has not changed a goddamn thing in my entire playing style. I was not following the prime directive as a captain in the other game, nor was I when I was the specialist in the one after that. I have never consistently played anyone other than a murder hope. So, here we are.
Which I think puts you quite at home in the bunch.
Yes. Sit down.
Kresic?
So I'm not playing a Klingon, in case you didn't notice. So the Gorn were a nice, empty little space to play in. We knew a little bit about them. We knew that they were highly intelligent, that they had a organizational system, and we knew that eventually they made some kind of agreement with the Federation by the time the DS9 rolls around. So most of my planning for how I was going to think like Kresic and have him make decisions like a Gorn was based off of extrapolating those and pulling out bits of supplementary beta canon material. And we're going quite swimmingly. And then Strange New Worlds dropped the season 1 mid-season episode. And just completely changed everything about the Gorn. And they did it again in the season 2 finale. And I had to take a bit of a step back and be like, okay, how can I reconcile this? Which I have. And you guys will never have to worry about seeing how it was reconciled, because our GM is a nice GM. I would never inflict that upon the players. But it really did, like, core fundamentals of Kresic are based off of those drastic design changes that happened with the Gorn hegemony. And that's all I can say.
I'll say as a general, just to add on to that, what is Broken Sword but or what is this campaign but an effort to reconcile the Trek that we knew and the new Trek? I was very deliberate in putting this in the pre-Discovery era and like trying to bridge a bit of what we'd seen in Enterprise and what we know was to come with the more recent series. And obviously this is much closer to the Discovery end, so it's like we don't go that much into the steps that got us there, except for when history occasionally drops or comes around.
That actually goes really well with the next question. But we've still got players to finish. So Raldar, how has Star Trek affected your role play, if any, for your characters?
Well, on the Prime Directed question, every Federation game I played in has never lasted more than 2 sessions. So that was never a problem. The first long game I played in, I played a Breen. So I had to write, and this was before the Discovery stuff, so I had to write all the fun stuff myself. And in regards to the Gorn changes, I took the Star Trek Online version and ignored Strange New Worlds. I was not a fan of Xenomorph Swift Guns.
I don't know that any of us are. Which I will not knock any of you that may be a fan of that, but it is an odd choice.
To be fair, we haven't actually seen what they plan on doing with it. So them getting up to bipedal stuff might be in their plans. You don't really know.
I mean, the
Who
most
knows?
we have seen one in a spacesuit. So I don't know.
All right, Captain Tabak, you have. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Jim.
No, it's just idle nonsense. Go right ahead.
All right, Captain Tabak, you have the con. How has Star Trek affected your gameplay?
Without the shows, we wouldn't know how our characters are supposed to function and operate. Federation guys are going to negotiate. Klingons are going to shoot the other guy in the face. Just what they do.
That's what the captain did last season.
Exactly. Had to do what he had to do to save his ship and save his crew. And then we got very clever and blew up ships that should have destroyed us.
One of the challenges that I've had with playing in the era that we have, especially not having watched before we started, I hadn't watched a lot of Discovery. Is some of the techno jargon that changes from the original series to the next gen and beyond. Some of the terminologies was a little bit of a struggle for me, and some of the scientific aspects I picked up pretty well. But have you all found that to be something really interesting to deal with for your characters and for your role play, as far as dealing with um, the techno jargon and the scientific stuff? I know our GM has been gracious to work with us on some of the era specific stuff.
Is this an open question?
Yes.
I am fluent in Star Trek technobabble. So it's part of the I don't know, the genre setting, whatever you want to call it. I mean, it's just such a big part of it. In original series, it was all over the place. The terminology was all over the place because they didn't care back then. Next Gen came out, that's when they started with, the series Bible, describing how everything worked, outlining how all the terminology is supposed to be used, and basically straightening out the mess that TOS had left. So it's been a lot more consistent since Next Gen and on. So, I mean, Discovery changed some of the terminology, and don't get me started on the JJ verse stuff, because that really messed up a lot of the terminology and technology, but tis what tis. But yeah, I mean, I know how a warp drive works, even if I don't have the materials or technology to make it work. Which is why I chose to be chose originally to be an engineer, because I know how that stuff works.
And a fine engineer you've been. What about the rest of you? How have you dealt with the some of the techno jargon stuff? Have you learned more while playing our game?
I think for me, the biggest challenge has been taking what gear I know and Klingonizing it. Because I know what the Federation equivalent would be, but A, is there a Klingon equivalent, which sometimes there's not, and B, if there is, would it have a different terminology and different nomenclature?
Klingon disruptors do not have a stun setting.
Yep.
They have a slightly less kill setting. Slightly less.
They've got to make them dead, and then they've got the liquefy them settings.
Do you wish for ashes or just missing limbs?
Tapioca time?
Ew.
That's a special gun. Trivia time. What actress turned down the role of Seven of Nine 4 times? That would be Jerry Ryan. I thought that was interesting. And one last card from our in-studio audience. Gul Dukat arrives on Deep Space Nine. He is met by Cisco and Kira. Cisco asks, occupation? Dukat replies, no, just visiting this time. And that's enough out of that guy. Send in the Moopsie.
No.
Modifius Entertainment is
Moopsie.
the company. There you go. Modifius Entertainment is the company behind our fantastic Star Trek Adventures game that we run. They have many resources for players and game masters. Just this last weekend, while I was waiting for my son, I was reading through the Game Master's Guide, which has a lot of Star Trek history and advice for running players through any era of Star Trek. They also have a player's guide, which provides more Star Trek history and advice for players to dive deeper into their characters and how to role play better. They also have the captain's log that allows you to play a lighter version of Star Trek Adventures that is convenient for solo play. This season, we saw a GM shift as I took over GMing for an episode. It was supposed to take one night, but ended up taking 3, which was fantastic. I really enjoyed being able to take that role and allow our GM a break from planning and plotting. And I hope our players really enjoyed that episode too, and our listeners. What did you all think of the GM shift and that episode?
It was a
Opening.
good episode. The GM shift, it's sometimes a game that's been running for a while. You shift GMs, and it can be a little rocky, but you did a great job. I enjoyed it a lot.
It was interesting. It was different.
I liked your scene setting. You did a really good job with your narration.
In all my years of GMing, I have never gotten quite the same vivid reaction as to the one I felt when you described what happened to Azek initially.
That was really hard to get through, and you set the scene beautifully there, buddy.
A few years back, I ran an episode or a game of Call of Cthulhu for some of my local. It was my at the time it was my wife and a couple of our friends, and they said my descriptions were way too graphic.
Which sounds like you're doing it right.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I mean, I am always partial to some cosmic horror, and I did appreciate taking the moment to set back. I think that circumstances being what they are, I the time I had to rest has helped me kind of get things a little more set, and I feel also that conversations that I have had with some of you have really helped inform me on, you know, of course, what everyone wants to see, but also what we think we can make work for the coming for the rest of the season. So, I I feel in like I'm in a much better sorts there. But it's nice to drop the reins for a moment. It was also very nice of you to not spend any of the threat and to allow me to inherit that entire pool for next session.
I'm pretty sure threats are supposed to reset every episode, isn't it?
No. You're thinking momentum.
No.
Oh, it gets worse. I still draw more for a new adventure.
Okay. You're supposed to take care of this.
It's okay, everyone. Next one's going to be like the one sort of breather episode where like you know nobody's going to get attacked there. Nobody's going to you know. It's just it'll be a breather, an opportunity to touch base, and then we'll have another episode.
Will that be the episode where we stop breathing?
Probably.
Can't rule it out.
Going back to across all of the episodes this season, how often has the story been thrown off course from your original plan in the episode? This kind of goes to the GM specific.
Oh, well, in a moment, I'm going to turn that back on you here, Joe. Just for Darkest Nebula, but let's see. I would say that the only major time where like there's a massive shift that I hadn't planned for and that did change some thinking was the end of episode 4 when in the course of that let's see, just to double check, that was sorry, just making sure I've got all this right. That would be Kulpul Judach Yelech, or roughly translated to the to keep the home fires burning, as it were, or close translation to it. But at the end of that episode, when two main characters decided to stay back right before the Yon was going into a what was very much like had the risk of being a combat situation, and when the ship had to navigate that, it was interesting how the dynamics shifted, and well, it I think that the crew adapted pretty well. Azek made a good captain. Raldar had plenty of chance to stand out, and the only people that needed medical attention needed it too much for a doctor to help them. So you were either fine or very dead. So it worked out.
I feel like your definition of worked out needs some work itself.
Maybe. But I turn this question back on you, Joe. How did we throw you through a loop with Darkest Nebula?
Honestly, it was the fun that we were having with the role play. As I mentioned before, I only expected to be going for one night, just a one shot, and it took us 3 nights to do it. And I love the character dynamics we had and some of the stuff you guys ran into with that. A couple of the shifts that I had to make in that episode were mostly because of flavor. There should have been a longer. There was planned to be a little bit of a longer uh, everything coming back on, and after the ship started exploding and everything started going super chaotic, but we just simply ran out of time.
Yeah.
And I think that's goes to more our role players and a little bit towards my lack of experience when it comes to GMing, especially GMing over a live stream setting. Okay, let's see. How much of the game, when you go into a game session, what is your prep for that session? And how much do you, with your characters or with GM, with your episodes, how much of that is planned out versus how much is it just fly by the seat of your pants? We'll start with Traven on this one.
Something is wrong with my headset. I caught by the seat of my pants, and that was it.
How when you go into getting ready to jump into a game, how much of it is planned out that your character is going to do? How does that prep look? And how much of what you do is completely improvised based off what's going on?
I can accurately say I am like 10%. That's what I like. 10%. I think of what I'm doing. The rest of it's just improv and adapting to the situation.
Whoa, how about you?
Somebody poke Ray.
Sorry. I always make these grand preparations that immediately fly out the window as soon as I open my mouth. So there's a fair amount of like mental prep, but it's overridden by a bad brain. So uh, not as much as I should. Probably should write some things down.
Kresic, how about you?
For the most part, it's just improv, whatever comes to it. If there's like a very high stakes, if you will, scene that's going to happen, then I'll discuss it in advance. Like I know I discussed it with our GM before we did the torture scene with the Nausicaan this season. But other than that, the main thing that I have to do is make sure to disconnect my characters when I'm switching between Kresik and Zayadal because they are so different. If I'm switching to my other character, it's just important that I take a second and reframe who I'm playing.
Raldar.
What time does Dane's session start? Okay, I'm done. That's about as much prep as I usually do.
That's fair. That's fair. Captain Tabak, how about you?
As a player, I really don't have much of prep to do aside from, I mean, some games they're you have to make additions or whatever modifications to your character sheet, but here not so much. Just get into the right headspace. As a GM, there's some planning, but GMing I've always said is like trying to herd cats. So you just got to go where your players take you. So you got to. I have to. I end up staying very very flexible with my prep work when I run games.
Mr. GM?
How much prep do I do? Oh, well, I mean, obviously, like, so I will say I have considered some of the time, like, going into the mission briefs and seeing if there's anything, like, that I might be interested in adapting, and just never quite found a fit for any of the things that I wanted to do. So it's a lot of it is, yeah, I mean, obviously it is fitting everything within, like, starting with what's the very broad idea, and I do use like the broad outline of what a mission brief is. So for those of you that got anything basically after the Klingon core rulebook, there'd be something that the starting point for plotting your episode. It would give you the insights to have like major beats, minor beats, any relevant NPCs, um, possible concluding rounds, things of that sort. Um, so start there, go through outlines, um, where episodes were going to necessarily feature somebody, particularly where it comes to backstory. There's obviously conversation that comes into play because the players and I, we are putting together this story jointly. Um, we do that as a general principle, but especially when it comes to character details, I'm all about making sure that we work this out. I think that it was conversations like that which really gave us some of our strongest episodes. You know, this season, the the focus that we had on Raldar during the Chav Haiwi episode is like excellent. Season before, going into the life and times of the life and death of Traven Lex was a standout, I think, for that reason. It was partly there because it was also like super weird and gave us the chance to do fun stuff in the Klingon afterlife. But like any time that synthesis really comes together, and yeah. Other than that, it's really just most of it is just figure it like there are smaller bits of prep that'll come out as I like ask myself questions on things, and some of that will come from developments that happen in a session. If I realize, oh, there's a bit of a hole that I didn't consider here, and you know, I can improv some of that, but like I'll between sessions try to make what has happened worked in the best of ways possible, and yeah, just go from there.
Our next question goes back to, or comes from the Speeching Bard again on Reddit. This is for all the players. Everybody has been using more supporting characters this season. How do you feel about stepping into a new minor character versus your primary character? We'll start at the top with Tabak.
Well, this is my first experience with using a support character. Um, it was made much easier for me because they weren't on the ship at the same time. It's going to get a little bit more complicated once they get back, I think. It was an interesting shift for me. Literally got me out of the captain's chair, and you know, I'm always worried that I'm using up too much screen time. You know, that I'm like hogging the spotlight, playing the captain. I mean, I'm doing it now in this whole interview thing. I talk way too long. But it was fun for me. Got to play somebody different, and sort of got to watch everybody else do their thing.
Raldar?
Yeah.
He'll let you know when he gets to play his supporting character.
Yeah.
Nah, don't worry. I need to write up the other one real quick.
Kresik, how about you?
It's stepping into familiar shoes for me. I tend to play the overconfident in their own abilities, sleazebag characters more often than not, which is why I went in a completely different direction with Kresik, as being somebody who actually A, is competent in his abilities, and B, is very much not a talky face kind of a character. But then we needed somebody to buy equipment. And so it was very easy for me to just slide back into a more face style operator, if you will.
Whoa, how about you?
I like playing Crooker because he is also not really like most of my characters. Um, like he has a high body count, and I do love killing, but he's not really about that. Um, I don't know. I like playing Crooker because he's weird and a little bit stupid, which is like the norm for all my characters, and completely unfuckable. Like just also quite normal, but I don't know, he's just different. So I do enjoy playing him, or did enjoy playing him more. Um, but the real star of the RPG, like NPCs, is Betty. Like holy fucking shit, I love that character so much. She is so goddamn weird. And I kind of can't wait until Kresic actually does. Has Kresic actually ever met her?
Briefly, yes.
You never did a paranormal check on her, did you?
Nope.
You need to. That's gonna be
Yep.
fun. I've forgotten the original question. I was just thinking how much I love Betty now. Sorry.
You're good. Traven, how about you?
I like playing. What was his name? Oh my god, I lost the train.
No, agree.
Nogri, thank you. I really like Nogri. He's he gives me that ability to. Traven can't do action, so it gives me that ability to do combat when Traven can't do combat. If that makes any sense, it gives me like it allows me to do something that I wasn't doing before, and I just think that's really cool to like refresh my mind and stuff, and not be stuck to one thing. And with this uh story, I mean, I had to do Nogri.
And this one will be a surprise to him, but Mr. GM, how was it stepping into Vopri's shoes?
I mean, Vopri is very much is one I'm already well used to wearing, just more as more for the purpose of exposition. That's honestly, like as a GM in this era, really across the board, an operations, communications, or science officer is kind of ideal for drip feeding the players some information on that. But what I did have to do that was different for this was to flesh out our little guy a little bit more. He now has a complete set of values, talents, focuses, all that sort of thing, and he had a little gremlin moment. He, it's a long time building, but he actually had that, so that was interesting to try and figure out how to make that work.
It was fun to see him in action again. Star Trek trivia time. Who was the first real astronaut to appear in any Star Trek episode? That would be Mae C. Jameson. She was on season 6, episode 24 of Star Trek Next Generation. The episode was Second Chances with Tom Riker, and she played Lieutenant Palmer, the transport.
I was
Chief.
on mute. I was answering that.
Oh,
Damn it.
it's really cool to see the real world influences, especially when it comes to NASA and stuff. Because I know Star Trek has been a big influence for so many astronauts and people that want to go visit the stars,
Oh.
especially kids growing up with it.
Hey, Tom Morello from Rage Against the Machine was on Voyager. And Seth MacFarlane was on Enterprise before he did Orville.
It's been many months since we started this adventure, going way back to episode 1 of season 1. Mr. GM, would you be so kind as to give us some stats from our stabs episodes, like when did we start, our audience, and the information that you got earlier?
Yeah, sure. So we have, I'd say, like obviously, this isn't the biggest, not even among the Star Trek adventure streams. It certainly isn't the biggest sort of setup, but um, yeah, we've had videos going back. We have in total 60 videos in this, including the previous two. The previous two Q&A sessions. Um, and since, let's see here, just trying to set this back a little bit further. Uh, so, our highest rated video is still, or well, the most viewed video at the very least was still the premiere, which is to be expected. But we've had some pretty decent numbers since the channels held up, and those in the course of those 2 years I think it's been running. The first video was uploaded the 27th of May back in 2022. We've been managing pretty well. I'd say, like, from the looks of things, we were averaging somewhere on the order of, like, at least a dozen viewers per episode. Some of those arcs really had, like, a considerable number of people, and quite a few episodes. It's interesting to see quite a few episodes that had a lot of, like, new people just suddenly come in. Like, I think the life and death of Traven Lex was a big one. The one in the Nebula where you were playing the cat and mouse game, that actually drew in a lot of people. Bounties was also very big. We had like 85 views on that one alone. And yeah, I would say we have a small but fairly dedicated audience. So when they catch up, we'll have it afterwards. We'll have at least a dozen views, and I can say that I've seen, like, the analytics say that more people have been starting from the beginning. So it's nice to know they're giving us a chance still.
We definitely want to thank our audience for both listening and watching us over these sessions. For those in the archive, we stream live, and for those of us on Twitch, we also have the archive, so you can go back and rewatch everything, which is really handy to have. As I recall, we had a range of character or players that had different experiences with role-playing games when we started, including some who hadn't had a lot of Star Trek Adventures experience. I, for one, even though I had all the books, I had only played a handful of games prior to playing in this continuous game. Thanks to this group, I have grown in confidence enough to run a live stream game with Darkest Nebula, and I ran an in-person game at my friendly local game store for Free RPG Day this last Saturday.
Nice.
And I wouldn't have been able to do that if it hadn't been for the confidence that I gained through being able to play with you guys. What is some advice you would give someone starting out fresh in Star Trek Adventures? This is an open question.
Make sure to read every single talent.
There's a lot of talents.
Remember to use determination.
Read the book. That's it. That's all I can give.
I'd say the book definitely helps. The big thing the big advice I would give is, like, first, communicate. Keep an open line. If you are a player going in, definitely, like, try to touch base with your GM when you can, or on a pace you can make work. If you are the GM, absolutely keep open lines of communication with the players. Think about, like, if there's something you want to go with or you want to do. I might have said this in the Aegis Q&A instead. I don't know if I've brought it up here before, but I had a background with competitive public speaking back in the day, and we would do obviously some people would do debates, some people would do events where they gave speeches. In addition, I did all of those. I also did some of the more interpretation-based events where you worked with literary pieces, prose, poetry, scripting of various sorts. And the point behind it was not simply to do a performance. Indeed, you're oftentimes like dressed in a suit, reading off a black book. You're not going so elaborate with everything, but the point is more what kind of argument are you trying to make with it? What are you trying to do and say with it? So figuring out, with the character, what kind of is an arc that you're interested in exploring, and being ready to having that in combination with that level of communication means that if everything works out, you can either if you're the player, you can realize those arcs, you can advance your player and do further be able to do interesting things. If you're doing it as a GM, then you can watch your players bloom into truly interesting things, or to do just amazing moments of role play, which I've had no shortage of in this campaign. Everybody has been great.
Anyone else have any advice for new players?
I do. I think along those lines of what our GM was saying, two things. Talk with your GM to know, well, like what Tabok said, read the manual. Always read the book. Talk with your GM to know what things from there they like to focus on, what things they don't. That will help you to set your expectations and also help you to build your character. Things like extended tasks or scientific method, things like that. Some GMs love them, some GMs don't. So, and a lot of your talents and systems are baked into those worlds. So, knowing how to craft it based off of what your GM does and doesn't plan to bring into their games. And then, personally, I feel like all RPGs should be this way, but more so than any others. Star Trek as a literary and what is that, film based media is always about exploring the human condition at the end of the day. So at the end of the day, have a concrete idea, and it can change, but have that idea of what it is your character is there to explore and to navigate through the game. If you do that, at the end of the day, math rocks are math rocks. The only reason they're here is so that you don't get involved in the playground dispute of my undodgeable laser beam comes and fires at you, but I have the undodgeable laser beam armor. It's going to be what it's going to be. But know how you want to see your character progress and grow into.
Every role-playing game is a simulation. You're trying to quantify what your character knows, what your character can do, and how well they can do both. So knowing the system makes those times when you have to actively use the system go smoother. But for the most part, role-playing is role-playing. Again, you were talking about the playground. I shot you, no, you didn't. And that's where the system comes in, or the simulation, whichever rule set you're using. I ran a Star Trek game RPG for 3 or 4 of my friends a number of years ago. I just used the D20 system. I mean, yeah, I had to make a whole bunch of stuff up and and some rules and things, but we knew the system and it worked fine. The system, the setting and the system are always two different things, but knowing the system makes, like I said, when you have to delve into it, that much easier. So yeah, read the rule book, understand it at least as much as you can from reading, and then learn what else you can about how the system works through experience.
And I think one other thing too, and this is for people who have a love for Star Trek as a media, but aren't necessarily the level of near dangerous
Geekdom.
knowledge that some of us are. Don't be afraid about that. A lot of people are hesitant to get into game systems of a pre-existing and pre-established IP because they feel like there is some impossibly high threshold of entry. If your GM is holding you to that, get a new GM.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
They are not here to have a fun time. They are here to play their own power fantasy.
Yeah.
But don't be afraid to dip your toes into a pre-existing IP. There's a lot of unexplored space that you can so get it, unexplored space, final frontiers, you could say.
Yeah, I was avoiding that one, but yeah.
Even within them, and hey, if you're having fun, that's all that matters.
Exactly. I mean, one thing that Star Trek has that a lot of other settings don't have is a crap ton of real hard canon material that in itself could be intimidating for people who don't know canon as if it was real history and you've got a master's degree in it. So sometimes that can be off-putting. But whatever the genre, whatever the system, whatever the setting, the whole point's to have fun. It's all just imaginary people doing imaginary things to other imaginary people. And the real people are supposed to be having fun. So just go for it.
And in a universe where Q exists, anything is possible. And with the right GM, they should be able to adapt to any inspiration that you have or ideas that you have. You want to play a Minbari from Babylon 5? Okay, let's figure out a way to make it work. You know, it's one of those things that just have fun with it. I will say the Star Trek Adventures starter set from Modifius is really good for starting off, learning just like the bare bones rules of what you need to get started to get familiar with the game. They've got handouts that are quick for you to reference, which are really nice. It is set in the post Deep Space Nine, post Voyager era, as most of the core books and stuff are. But there's a lot of reference material with all their books to set yourself in any era that you want to go in. So don't let that stop you from hopping in there and playing. And we want to make sure that everybody follows and likes and subscribes to our channel and Twitch and our YouTube and stuff like that. We have one last trivia question before we end. That's right. It's almost 8:45 and we're coming close to the end. What was the last words of the last episode of Star Trek the original series?
Oh God, that's the worst episode. That's the second worst episode ever.
Quick, everybody. Wrong answers only.
Wrong answers only. Let's get the fuck out of here.
Mr.
There we go.
Spock, I find your logic flawed, but damn, I just can't resist those eyes.
So when does Data show up?
Luke, I am your father.
Fly, you fools!
I don't know,
Well,
Spock. I guess it's true. Your towels are a whole lot softer than mine.
In
You
search of
never
his
learn how
brain.
to take care of babies?
The
Please,
last
someone
words.
tell me that you understand that reference.
It's more of
The,
I didn't even hear
the,
it, so.
I will kill all of you.
You broke up. I'm sorry. Say it again, please.
You're breaking up.
Yes,
That'd be-
because you're getting married.
the last words of the last episode of Star Trek TOS was "if only." And with that, I'll hand it back. I'll hand it back to our great GM. Thank you so much for letting me host this and ask our players questions. Back to you.
All right. Well, I resume my place in the center board. Get down there. Get down. Ah. Full power. All right. So yeah, that was our mid-season Q&A. We hope you enjoyed it, and we hope that you are ready for the next half of the season. We are looking forward to getting back to our Star Trek adventures, and I think the opportunity to bring our cast back and to untangle the messes that have come about through this first half, and let's say like if we land where I plan on us landing, then I think you guys are in for a wild ride. But I shall do my best as a GM to get us there with as few bumps as possible. So, with all of that, I will thank you for joining us once again from the center of our entertainment galaxy, and just taking a little bit of time with us here. We will be back next week with another Star Trek adventure, and it will be. It'll definitely be. I've lost my train of thought. We'll be back next week, though, and we look forward to having you join us for these adventures. For those watching this in the archive, we hope you're enjoying catching us live, and can continue to join us Tuesdays at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, or for those that haven't done so, we hope you are able to join us in those times. I think with that, that is just where we will set off for tonight, and you folks have a good rest of your day. Hopla.
Kapla.
Moopsie.